So our first topic is medication basics. And the first question is really, why do medications matter? Why does MICC worry about medications? And ultimately, it comes back to our goal of independence. And with medications, independence with medication management. We have 3 competencies, which are our way of measuring independent living skills needed for an independent life after graduation. And 3 of them relate to medications. We work with students on knowing their medications, on using their medications, so taking them on time, taking them when they need to, adhering to doctor requirements, and medication coordination, so picking up medications, ordering refills, working with doctors and pharmacies. All of those pieces are part of those 3 medication competencies. And part of why those are competencies is because we know that for our students and graduates, their long-term health and their long-term ability to be self-advocates, particularly in areas of health and medical management, require that they know medication names, dosages, purposes, and times. That they know their possible side effects of medications and how to handle when medication errors happen. That they remember how to take medications on time without being reminded because of sometimes really severe consequences that can happen if medications aren't taken on time. And finally, ordering and picking up refills before running out of medications, again, is critical for long-term health and self-advocacy. And medications is one of those areas where MICC can't do it alone. We have to have the students' partnership and the family's partnership and the healthcare providers' partnership to make all this possible to help students be successful. So MICC has 3 different levels of monitoring medications. And we say monitoring because we don't do medication administration. We don't have nurses on staff. We have staff who are trained in medication monitoring, basic safety levels, but students are the ones who take the medications themselves. And so the 3 different monitoring levels are supervision. This is where medication is stored in a locked medication office on site. Student takes the medications directly in front of staff during our specified med windows. And the students fill their pill box with staff support weekly. So staff never touch students' medications. Students are the only ones who touch it, but with the supervision, every step of the medication process is supervised by staff. The next level is time reminders. This is where students are now able to keep their medications in their safe that's provided in each student's bedroom. Each student has their own. Staff are involved. Normally students call in medications. We're doing something new this year where students will join a Google Meet session. So we actually have a little face-to-face contact during that med window to report they've taken meds. So they don't take the meds in front of staff, but they call in and report every time they're supposed to take meds to say that they've taken it. So we know it hasn't been forgotten. And then they still fill the pill box weekly with staff observation. So trying to have staff just observe and make sure it's correct rather than staff actively supporting. So working on that independence. And then the final level of medication monitoring is independent. The students, again, continue to keep their medications in their bedroom safe. They no longer have to call in their meds daily. Instead, they do a weekly report with their advisor on their medication adherence. And they still, during that meeting, show their filled pill box to staff so we know that they're continuing to take their medications. So those are our 3 monitoring levels. And then since I mentioned the medication windows, these are our set medication window times. We certainly work with students and families if they take a medication that is outside of one of these times, but most meds we found will fit within these times. So there's a morning time, which Monday through Friday is 8 to 8:45, and then on the weekends is a little bit later since it's the weekend, so 8:30 to 9:30. Afternoon meds are always 12 to 12:30 and 5 to 5:30 p.m., 7 days a week. And then evening meds are Sunday through Thursday, so nights before school are 8:30 to 9:15. And then on those weekend nights, Friday and Saturday, it's extended until 9:30 to reflect the later curfew for students. So we do have a few medication requirements for any students taking medications. The first is that all students must have a daily pill box. And I put a few different examples on here, but all students, I've seen all different designs of pill boxes. So if a student just has one time of day that they take a pill, just a simple Sunday through Saturday pill box, it works just fine. I do tend to like having the different colors per day just because it draws the attention to making sure you're taking the correct day. But that's really the student's choice. If there are, 2 times a day, I've seen a lot of pill boxes like this. So the AM are lined up on one side and the PM on the other side. That's fine too. And then I've seen this kind as well, where instead of relying on AM and PM words, which sometimes will trip certain students up, uses common symbols. So a sun for midday, a moon for night, and like a rising sun for early in the morning. So there's lots of pill boxes out there. Certainly don't feel like there's a particular right or wrong one. If a student is struggling to identify which section of the pill box to use, that will be something that advisors can work with a student and family on to find a different pill box if needed. So this is just a reminder that students, as I mentioned, must be able to take medications with support from trained staff and not need medical personnel, because we do not have, like I said, a nurse, doctor on campus. So if a student needs medical personnel to take medication, that would be a conversation to have with admissions, with the advisor. And the other requirement is students must comply with their doctor's prescribed medication regimen. So MICC does not require that students take medications. We would never require a student do that. There have been times where we've requested that a student meet with a psychiatrist to make sure their medications are the right dosage, because we're just seeing some patterns that when talking with a student and family make us want to make sure that their healthcare provider knows some things that are going on, but we never require a student to take medications. We just require that whatever a student and their family have agreed upon with their doctor and their healthcare provider, that students agree to follow that. That if they're supposed to take a medication, they take that, so that we know they are taking care of their health and doing what their providers would like them to do. So that's the medication basics. And I do want to mention before I go into medication communication that for students who don't take medications, we currently don't formally rate those medication competencies, but we do pay attention to how well does the student understand over-the-counter medications, cold medicine, allergy medicine, things like that. And so we do have students who take vitamins and supplements, and we certainly, if students and families want us to, we'll treat those like prescribed medications to support them in learning those important steps of medication management. So just wanted to mention that. All right, medication communication. How does MICC keep record of all the medications that students take? So I just want you to know that we have secure electronic records. We use Carasolba. It's a secure online database tracking system for medication, so HIPAA compliant, very secure. And that system tracks the medications students are on, as well as the date times and the medications that they take for students who are on supervised and time reminders. So that's how we track if a student has taken their medications, if they're on supervision or time reminders, and how we can note patterns of tardiness to meds, issues with missing meds so that we can address that as an educational need to help them with medication independence. At the beginning of the year, you've probably already been working on all of this paperwork. MICC collects signed doctor's orders for each medication. We have a MICC specific medication form as well. And then if MICC is working with a student on supervision, when the student comes to campus, we'll collect their original prescription bottle with correct label. Should include the name of the student, dosage, name of doctor, pharmacy, and date. And most prescription bottles will have all that information. We just want to make sure that the original prescription bottle's there so that we feel confident that the student is taking their medications and the right medications. Obviously, medication changes, right? We all get prescriptions updated, things happen. So any changes in medication must be communicated immediately to the advisor in writing so that we know that a change is happening. This is particularly critical for students on supervision and timed reminders. The name of the updated medication, if that has changed, and the correct dosage should be provided. And then as soon as possible, sending to your advisor the updated doctor prescription forms that come with when a prescription has changed, and then also a medication change form, which will be provided at the beginning of the year. And so that medication change form plus the updated prescription is what we need to make the changes in Carasolva to update our system. Over-the-counter medication. So if you've started going through that medication form, you'll know that it includes a list of approved over-the-counter medications. We keep track of that, mostly for educational purposes. So if a student, says, "Oh, I have a headache and I need to go buy a pain reliever," we can support them in talking with their family, looking at the list of approved over-the-counter so they know, oh, I can't take ibuprofen. It interacts with my prescription medications or something like that. So that's why it includes that list of approved over-the-counter medications. Students must provide their own over-the-counter medications. So MICC will not provide pain relievers, cold medicine, allergy medicine, etc., because we're not trained healthcare providers. And so students should bring that, and it's part of that fall packing list. MICC staff so advisors will support students in making sure they're following directions for over-the-counter medications or helping them reach out to resources, family, nurse line, whatever it might be, to help them decide what over-the-counter medication they should take, how often, how long, those things that families who know their patterns might know, or a trained healthcare provider would know. So we will certainly support students in figuring out those important questions. So that was medication communication. I want to talk about medication progression now, that movement through the different medication monitoring levels. So it's a good question to ask, well, when can a student move from supervision to time reminders, from time reminders to independent? How do they progress? As a note, we used to say students couldn't move from a level to the next level the first semester until December 1st to have lots of information about their ability to track and take medication safely. And we are wanting to be more flexible based on student and family feedback so that we're able to meet students' needs. So it's not based on a particular time period, but instead on these patterns. So we'll look at, is the student able to take meds on time without staff prompting at the current level? Are they able to take the meds accurately? So do they look at the correct part of their pill box and take the correct pill and the correct dose without staff prompting at their current level? And does a student want to change to a different level? Are there if they have a guardian, is the guardian in agreement? And does that match with what the advisor and the medication supervisor, Chrissy Cleveland, are seeing as well with the patterns? Do they all agree that a student is ready to progress? And then the final step, of course, is just completing that medication change form, paperwork indicating on there, even if there's not a medication change, there's a spot to indicate that the monitoring level has changed so that we have record of everyone agreeing that this is the right time for the student to make that independence change. So we have the question of progressing, right, from supervision to time reminders to independent. But what if a student is struggling with medications? There's quite a number of options. It could mean moving to a different medication level. So it could mean if they're on time reminders and struggling, going back to supervision. It could mean if they're on independent medications, moving back to time reminders. It could also mean staying at that level, but adding additional phone apps to track medications. It could be, and I think I mentioned this earlier in the presentation, it could be working with family and medical providers to examine the current medication dosage and schedule to make sure it truly is what is needed to support the student in their medication independence. Other options could include alarms. We have an agreement with Pacer where we can help students borrow for a period of time to try out fancy alarm clocks that are incredibly loud or shake the bed, trying different visual schedules, other time management strategies, just like we would use with helping a student get to class on time. And other options could include social stories or video models if a student is struggling with how to use the pill box accurately, or if they're struggling with remembering medication details, providing visual supports that way so they understand the medications and how to take them properly. There are a lot of different ways to know a student might be having difficulty with their medication routine. And so these are some of the signs that as staff we watch out for and encourage students and families to watch out for too. The first is if the student just isn't taking meds on time, if they don't take the correct dosage of meds, if on their pill box they're mixing up their morning AM meds and their PM afternoon meds, if they're mixing up the days in their pill box, so if they're taking Tuesday meds when it's Monday or Friday meds when it's Wednesday. If the student is refusing to take their meds, so if they're not in agreement with the doctor's prescriptions, that indicates an important conversation needs to take place. So since I mentioned some phone apps, I wanted to just show a few examples that students and families have chosen to use. MediSafe is an example, and here's a screenshot of just what it might look like on a phone. So they have different options where you can see the pill shape, name, dosage. You can also, they'll sometimes do where you can have a visual picture instead. These will set alarms and remind students to take their meds. My Therapy is another one students use. Here's an example of what a notification might look like to remind students to take their meds. And My Therapy also has an option where you can set up the account so that if a student does not take their meds, it alerts a family member that they've chosen. So this can be helpful sometimes for students on independent meds who are really great about taking their meds, but just every now and then miss a dosage. That can be an extra safeguard to set up so families can know, hey, you know, Billy, don't forget to take your meds, and they'll take it. All right, final section of this medication presentation is medication refills, most challenging part of medication management. So I put on here, there's a few important next steps that students and families can be taking right now before returning to campus or coming to campus for the first time. And the first step is determining how a student will refill their medications on campus. And I'll show you a few different options here in a moment. The next step is selecting a local pharmacy. And again, I'll show you a few options here in a moment. The third step is making sure those medications are transferred once you've determined the local pharmacy and that they are set for automatic refills. Some medications I know cannot be set to automatic refills for various reasons, but we encourage certainly, if they can be, that it eliminates that extra step of having to call in refills. So that's important. And then this fourth one here is, while at home, begin practicing independent medication taking and tracking. Notice is, if you're a student, are your parents having to remind you to take your meds? Where do you typically take your meds? When do you take them? Start practicing you having ownership over it and recognizing areas you may need support with on campus. So here are those options for med refills that I mentioned. The first, and this is an option that we've only had just a couple students use, but it can be useful if a student takes a lot of medications. And that's a multi-dose pack, where they're actually pre-packaged by the pharmacy into little bags so that the student does not have to count out which pills belong to a certain time period. It's pre-packaged. And so we found that some CVSs do this, and then a few different online pharmacies do this. PillPack is one, and ReadyMeds is another one that will do that service. Another option for medication refills is medication delivery. So we have had some students choose to use this if they have limited mobility skills, or if they're not able to travel to a pharmacy independently. So if they use an online pharmacy, if you use a local pharmacy at home and don't want to change pharmacies. Some families and students choose to do it because they have a lot of anxiety and difficulty around medication coordination and find it's just easier to have the meds delivered than picking them up at a pharmacy. So certainly know that's something that has become common for a lot of people. So it's not a sign of lack of independence. It's just another option available. So we've found that most CVS's, Walgreens, Walmart, and some of these online pharmacies like PillPack and ReadyMeds, of course, will do medication delivery. But just know that they're not always available for controlled substances. And a lot of ADHD medications in particular are often considered controlled substances. And then, of course, a third option is to have an in-person local pharmacy. And many of those pharmacies have apps to help make medication reordering easy. And of course, a lot of students will just call the pharmacy for med refills. So here are 3 local pharmacies that a lot of students use. They're close to campus. A lot of folks will just look at the Richfield pharmacies, and often the Richfield ones are actually farther away than the Bloomington ones. So the Walgreens that's closest is on Penn Avenue in Bloomington, Minnesota. Here's phone number and times. So information as you're deciding. You can always, pause this video so you can capture this information. The closest CVS is in a Target in Southtown. Again, technically in Bloomington. And here's its hours. And then Cub, which is where students do grocery shopping, also has Cub Pharmacy, and they do a lot of their services online. We don't have as many students who use that, so I would talk with them to confirm hours as an option. So that's just a general orientation to medications at MICC, how they work. Certainly encourage you to email myself if you have any questions, Savannah Sisk. All of our emails at MICC are just our first initial and last name. So mine is ssisk, ssisk@miccommunity.org. But Chrissy Cleveland, whose email address is here on the screen, is our formal medication coordinator at MICC. And so we'll have the most up-to-date and accurate information for you about medications. So take care, and look forward to seeing you all on campus here soon.